Hello everyone. Today I'm going to explain this important topic, the rise of nationalism in Europe. This topic is given in class 10th history book. It is the first chapter of history book. Today I'm going to explain this full chapter in various steps. Kindly watch this full video. If you will not watch this full video, you will not be able to understand all the important concepts of this chapter. In one video only, I will explain all these topics step by step. So first of all, give a look on this picture. Here this picture is given on the first page of your chapter in NCERT book. This picture is made by a French artist, Frederic Soriot. He made this picture in 1848 and gave the name Democratic and Social Republics. In his series, Frederic Soriot, I am talking about the French artist, he had shown a utopian view. Now, this word utopian, you have to understand first. Utopian refers to a vision of society that is so ideal that it is unlikely to actually exist. In simple words, if you will understand this utopian word, you may say that imaginary, which is not real. In this picture, if you will give a close look, you will find that on the left side, this encircled area is showing Statue of Liberty, and people of various nations having different flags in their hands, they are marching towards this Statue of Liberty. You might see that this procession is led by United States, then Switzerland, France, French color you may see here, a tricolor is used, Germany bearing this black, red and gold flag. Many other nations, they are also following this procession. They are also marching towards Statue of Liberty. This was a utopian view of Frederic Soriot. He felt that there was a feeling of nationalism among the people. People realized that we must go towards Statue of Liberty. Now, they wanted to establish a democratic rule, a democratic government in their countries, because in most of the European countries before 19th century there was monarchy or absolutism. Here in the next slide you may see that Soriot's utopian vision is mentioned, that he was a French artist and in this slide you may see that his dream of the world made up of democratic and social republics, as he called them, means all the countries are moving, countries are marching towards this Statue of Liberty, which was a symbol of democracy. On the next page of this chapter, you might find one source where it is written what is a nation by Ernst Renan, E-R-N-S-T, Renan. Students, those who are preparing for good percentage, means those who are trying to get 100 marks out of 100, they should not avoid any important concept of the chapter, specifically these sources, means which are carrying important information. So, here about Ernest Renan, means who was a French philosopher in 1882, means he gave some statement regarding the nation, that what is a nation, what is the definition of nation. Because when we talk about nationalism, this terminology nation is very, very important. Earlier this was not existed. Earlier this nation was not in use. People, they had different kingdoms, they lived in different states. So, what Ernest Renan said, means he said that a nation is the culmination of a long past of endeavors, sacrifice and devotion. A heroic past, great man, glory, that is social capital upon which one bases a national idea. To have common glories in the past, to have a common will in the present, to have performed great deeds together, to perform still more, these are the essential condition of being a people. A nation is therefore a large scale solidarity. Its existence is a daily plebiscite. Here you have to understand this meaning of plebiscite also, that it was a direct vote by which all the people of the region are asked to accept or reject the proposal. So, he said that a province is its inhabitants. If anyone has the right to be consulted, it is the inhabitant. A nation never has any real interest in annexing or holding on country against its will. The existence of nations is a good thing, a necessity even. The existence is the guarantee of liberty, which would be lost if the world has only one law and only one master. You might have understood the meaning of the nation here, that Ernest Renan explained that if there is one master, one law in the world, it can't be a nation. Means he was not in favor of dictatorship type of government. He said that this nation is by the heroic past of the country, by the great man, their glory, their work, their performance, when people are given rights. Coming to our next slide, which is on the screen now, the French Revolution and the idea of nation. So, first of all, we have to understand about French Revolution, that in class 9th also there was one chapter of French Revolution, first chapter in history, that a revolution took place in France country in 1789, which brought these ideas of liberty, equality and fraternity. I am giving you bit information about the French Revolution. Here revolution means complete change in social, economic and political order of the nation. So, before 1789 there was an old regime in France. French society was divided into three states: clergy, nobility and commoners. Commoners, they paid taxes to the government. Louis XVI was the king of France in 1789, who was not competent. He had no experience of political administration. So, he indulged France in American War of Independence, as well as during his period French treasury became empty. So, he tried to impose taxes on French society by calling States General Assembly in May 1789, in which commoners refused to accept the new proposal, new laws of French monarch, and assembled outside the tennis court, outside the palace in tennis court, and they declared France as National Assembly. Later on, means this National Assembly, it was renamed as National Convention and decided to execute king and queen because of their betrayal. Finally, Declaration of Rights of Men and Citizens was given to the citizens of the France, and this revolution brought new ideas. It brought democratic feelings among the people. Liberty, equality and fraternity is the root cause of this French Revolution. Here in our chapter, some important terminologies are given related to this French Revolution. On the screen you might see here. Here I am highlighting. First one is la patrie. This was an idea, the fatherland. These terminologies brought feeling of nationalism among the people, love for the nation, somewhere togetherness. The second terminology is here citoyen, les citoyens. Here you might see les citoyens, the citizen. Earlier this citizen and this fatherland, these terminologies were not in existence. So, la patrie means the fatherland, and les citoyens emphasized the nation of the united community enjoying equal rights under a constitution. I hope that you understood what this French Revolution gave to the people of France. Because of this revolution, first time this equal rights feeling, citizens feeling, fatherland feeling, that people enjoyed. Tricolor was chosen to replace the formal royal standard, and democracy was declared in France. Here we have next slide, National Assembly, that was formed, as I told you, that when States General Assembly failed and commoners assembled in tennis court under Mirabeau and Abbassies, they decided to form National Assembly. By this, new hymns were composed for the nation. Oath was taken the martyrs were commemorated in the name of the nation. A centralized administrative system that was adopted. Here you might see that uniform laws for the citizens of the country within its territories were also adopted. Earlier there were no uniform laws. Now you will see one another picture of a famous dictator, famous emperor of France, who brought new changes for the people of France. Not only in France, he brought these changes and feeling for the other parts of the world also. Napoleon Bonaparte. In year 1804 AD, Napoleon Bonaparte, he introduced Napoleonic Code, which is also called Civil Code of Napoleon Bonaparte, and by this code, Civil Code, he did some changes. These are some of the provisions of his Civil Code 1804. These are some of the important contents, important topics of the chapter, which may come in final examination too. So, you must underline your important points in your book too. So, first point, first provision of his Napoleonic Code was that he simplified administrative division. Next one is he abolished the feudal system. Feudal system existed in society, means in which upper class people or people who were close to the king, they had all the powers in their hand. So, Napoleon Bonaparte, he abolished, did away all the privileges based on birth and established equality before the law, freed peasants from serfdom and manorial dues, which peasants were facing a lot of problem. Guild system, guild was for the traders. There were many restrictions on the guild during that time. This was the trade union of the French society. So, restrictions were removed. Transportation and communication system, that was also improved. Peasants, artisans, workers and new businessmen, they enjoyed new freedom during that period. For businessmen and small scale producers of goods in particular, began to realize that uniform laws, standard weight and measures, means that was introduced by Napoleon Bonaparte. He introduced a common national currency for the people. Coming to the next slide of this chapter, as you all know that Napoleon Bonaparte remained in power till 1815, because in the Battle of Waterloo he was defeated by the allied forces and he was sent to exile on St. Helena Island, where he died in 1821 after few years. Europe in 19th century, here this is the second topic of this chapter, the making of the nationalism in Europe. That time European states were ruled by different dynasties, rules. If we may say the example that the Habsburg Empire that ruled over Austria Hungary. It included the Alpine region, the Tyrol, Austria and Sudetenland as well as Bohemia. These topics you may read from your book too. Germany, Italy and Switzerland were divided into different kingdoms. When you will read this full chapter, you will try to understand that Germany, Italy, these were not nations that time. These were divided into many small states, small provinces. 39 confederations were there in Germany. Even Italy was also divided into 7 parts. People, they had no collective identity. They spoke different languages. There was no political unity in Europe. Next, content 2.1 of this chapter is the aristocracy and the rise of middle class. Aristocrats were the people who dominated in the society, who were rich people, who were close to the king. They had all the powers in their hands. They were united by the common ways of life that cut across the regional divisions, whereas these people, aristocrats, means they owned the property of the states. They spoke French for the purpose of diplomacy and in high society, means to show themselves superior to other people. So, when we talk about the rise of middle class, that time middle class arose. Middle class refers to businessmen, small businessmen, teachers, lawyers, philosophers, means those who brought new ideas. So, here next terminology is, what did liberal nationalism stand for? This is 2.2 para of this chapter. So, in liberalism, first of all we have to understand the meaning of this term liberalism. Here this word liberalism, it has been derived from the Latin root word liber. You might see on the screen I am showing you. Just I have encircled this term liber. Its meaning is free. From Latin word it has been taken. Liber means free. So, liberalism stood for freedom for individual and equality of all before the law. Here you may see in the next paragraph that freedom for the individuals and equality of all before the law. Liberalism simply freedom to all. So, in the chapter means this meaning and definition of liberalism is given in different aspects. First, it is related to political liberalism. Political liberalism refers to liberalism or the freedom of universal suffrage, freedom of right to vote to the people in the entire nation. Economically, if we talk about this liberalism, it stands for the economic freedom, means where people are given right to do their free trade without any restrictions, without any jurisdictions, and they can do their trade freely in any part of the country. Then comes to social freedom. Social liberalism means in society there is no discrimination on the basis of caste, color, gender, etc. Here some important terminologies are given in this paragraph 2. One is LE, you might see on the screen. it is highlighted here. LE refers to the measurement of the clothes, means this was the term which was used for the measurement instrument. What happened that in Europe, from one place to another place, there were different measurements of cloth. Frankfurt means this was 54.7 centimeter of the cloth for one. In Mainz it was 55.1 centimeter. In Nuremberg it was 65.6 centimeter, and in Freiburg it was 53.5 centimeter. So this LE was adopted. This was the measurement of cloth, means which reduced all these barriers, and now measurement of cloth was similar for all these states. Another terminology is Zollverein. Zollverein refers to a custom union. Meanwhile, in 19th century, most of the European states had their different custom unions. They collected different taxes on the border areas. There was no fixed tax at one place. So this Zollverein was formed at the initiative of Prussia, and it was accepted by other German states. Means it reduced the differences of taxes, it abolished tariff barriers and reduced the number of currencies from over 32 to only 2. You might see here it is mentioned. Economic nationalism, it strengthened the wider nationalist sentiment of the time. In the next slide, you might see this conservatism terminology. Conservatism terminology, here it refers that means people who believed in past ideology, who were not in favor of any change, those who felt that monarchy system or the kingship was better than other government, means they are called conservatives. Napoleon Bonaparte brought many changes in Europe from 1799 to 1815. People called him liberator or the modernizer, and national sentiments came in the mind of people. They started thinking about the democracy and liberal ideas. After the defeat of Napoleon Bonaparte in 1815, when he was defeated in Battle of Waterloo, a treaty was signed between European nations. Austrian Chancellor Duke Metternich, he was the head of that treaty, that Congress, Vienna Congress, or that meeting you may say, and the purpose of this Vienna Congress was to do changes which Napoleon Bonaparte did during his period. Purpose of this Vienna Congress was to establish monarchy once again in Europe. Here are some provisions of this Vienna Treaty. One by one I am going to explain here. The first one is, by this Vienna Congress, here first point you may see on the screen, Bourbon dynasty, this was the dynasty of France, it was restored once again, because in 1789 revolution monarchy was ended, it was abolished, and democracy was established. Now, once again, after 1815, Bourbon dynasty was set up in France. Meanwhile, again there was restoration of monarchy in France. Second, a series of states were set up on the boundaries of France to prevent French expansion in future, because these countries were afraid of French expansion. They felt that France expanded its boundaries in most of the areas. That's why all the countries came in trouble. Napoleon Bonaparte, he conquered most of the states. So they established series of small states on the boundaries of France. French areas were demilitarized. Then the Kingdom of Netherlands, which included Belgium, was set up in north. Genoa was added to Piedmont in the south. Persia was given important new territories on its western frontier areas. Austria was given the control of northern Italy, and these German confederations, German states, which were 39, that had been set up by the Napoleon, remained untouched. It was not touched by this Vienna Congress. Russia was given part of Poland, while Persia was given a portion of Saxony, one of the duchy, a small state. Main purpose of this Vienna Congress was to establish monarchy and conservatism in European states. Specifically, it was simply a computer formula, shortcut key Control plus Z or G, you may say. Undo of all the changes which Napoleon did during his period. In the next slide, you might see an important terminology, the revolutionaries, those who brought some changes in European society, in European countries. These revolutionaries are mentioned in this paragraph. So in this paragraph, one of the important revolutionaries mentioned. You may see highlighted portion on the screen, Giuseppe Mazzini. In shortcut, we may say Mazzini. Mazzini was the person who was born in Genoa in 1807 AD. He is known for his revolutionary work, his ideas, his thoughts, and role in unification of Italy as a powerful state. He remained member of secret societies in one of his important secret society was Carbonari. He became the member of this secret society. You may see on the screen. Because of his revolutionary activities, he was sent to exile in 1831 because he attempted a revolution in Liguria. Later on, he founded two another secret societies, one Young Italy. See on the next screen. Young Italy in Marseilles. Young Europe, one another secret society, the third one in Bern. Mazzini, he was considered as the most dangerous enemy of our social order. Metternich, the Chancellor of Austria, he described him as the most dangerous enemy of social order because he was afraid of him and his ideas of liberalism. What Mazzini believed? He believed that God had intended nations to be the natural unit of mankind, and Metternich, this might be your important answer in final examination. Kindly pay attention that who described him as the most dangerous enemy of the social order. So Metternich, he is also called Metternich and Metternich. Next we have a third para of this chapter, the age of revolutions 1830 and 1848. As you all know that in France there were three important revolutions. One was in 1789, second was in 1830, and third was in 1848. This was the final revolution in France. And finally democracy came in France after this 1848 revolution, when France was declared a democratic nation. Once Metternich, he remarked about France nation, the rest of the Europe, when France sneezes, the rest of the Europe catches cold, because France had an important role in European politics. Napoleon Bonaparte, we have already discussed that he was one of the active member of European society that time, who did many changes in Europe. This is the map of Europe that time. You might see that in Europe, means most of the territories were under the Ottoman Empire. Here Ottoman Empire is shown. In the next slide, Greek War of Independence is given here. Greek is a nation which was under the control of Ottoman Empire, as we had seen in the previous map. This Ottoman Empire of Turkey, which has Rome as its capital, it was a Muslim empire. It was the part of Roman Empire since 15th century, when feeling of nationalism, print culture, rise of middle class, new ideas, liberty, equality, fraternity reached in Greek nation, then people demanded their independence from Ottoman Empire, and people decided to get independence from this Ottoman Empire nation. In 1821, feeling of nationalism began in Greek nation, and a revolution began, which is called Greek War of Independence 1821, which continued up to 1832. Most of the poets, artists, scholars, nationalists, revolutionary people of the country, they participated in this Greek War of Independence. You might see on the screen that an English poet, Lord Byron, he also participated, and he collected fund for revolution against the Muslim Empire. Although he died because of fever in 1821, This Greek War of Independence ended with one treaty in 1832, which is known as Treaty of Constantinople, and by this treaty this Greece nation, this was declared as an independent nation. This was one of the major achievement of the people in Greece. Next terminology is Romanticism. Romanticism, just like we read about conservatism, means people who believed in past ideas, who were not in favor of any change. Liberalism refers to freedom of the people. This terminology Romanticism refers to an, you can say, a way of feeling of nationalism through poetry, stories, music, art, culture. Means in this Romanticism period, poets, artists, means here painters, singers, writers, all these people, they aroused the feeling, they prompted the feeling of nationalism among the people through their writings, through their songs, through the language, through the culture, etc. So culture, it played an important role in creating the idea of nation in Romanticism period. Some examples are given of in this chapter related to this Romanticism, in which language played an important role in developing in the development of national sentiment. One example is given of Poland, means in which Polish people of Poland, means they denied to use Russian language and they used Polish language only in churches for their prayer, and ultimately Polish came to be seen as the symbol of struggle against the Russian dominions. On the other hand, some other philosophers of that period were Johann Gottfried, who was a German philosopher, who claimed that true German culture was to be discovered among the common people. This Das Volk terminology was used by him first time. Another important personality of this Romanticism period was Karol Kurpinski. He celebrated the national struggle through his operas and musics, turning folk dances like the Polonaise and Mazurka into the national symbols. So, not only famous personalities like German philosopher Johann Gottfried Herder and Karol Kurpinski, language, literature also played an important role during this time. Next, we have another paragraph of this chapter 3.2, Hunger, Hardship and Popular Revolt, 1830s, in which one famous revolt, Silesia Revolt of 1845, is mentioned. When you will see on in your book, you will find that weavers in Silesia, they led this revolt against the contractors who supplied raw material and gave them orders for the finished textile, but they reduced the payment of these weavers. So ultimately, weavers of these states revolted against their contractors, and here one incident is mentioned that on 4th of June, a large crowd of weavers, they emerged from their homes, they came from their home and marched in pairs up to the mentions of their contractor demanding the high wages. Although people were treated with threat, scoldings, etc., they were forced to go back. Ultimately, the contractor fled with his family to neighboring village, which however refused to shelter such a person. So he returned back in 24 hours, and later on some number approximately 11 weavers were shot dead. Meanwhile, contractor he used his power. Next paragraph of this chapter is related to revolution of liberals in 1848. (1848) is not only the year for France or French Revolution, it was one of the important year for Frankfurt Parliament, which was held in 1848. Here you may see the picture of this Frankfurt Parliament is shown here. This Parliament. What was this Parliament? You can see on the screen that on 18th of May 1848, 831 elected representatives, they assembled and gathered in Frankfurt Parliament in one of the church, St. Paul. It was a combined effort of Prussia and other states to unite German nations. With initiatives of Prussia, Frederick William IV, here you might see on the screen, he was offered crown of the Prussia, though he rejected, because he had fear that in case he will accept this crown or kingship of Prussia, kingship of this German nation, people will not accept his order because they believe in monarchy, in constitutional changes. So he invited his nearby friends, other monarchs, and with the support of troops, this assembly, it was forced to disband. Means ultimately it was eroded. Next, you can see one picture here which is about the German unification. Before moving ahead, we have to understand one new word is given in the chapter, feminist. Feminist refers to awareness of women's right and interests based on the belief of social, economic and political equality of the gender. Means people who believed in women's rights, who work for the rights of the women, they are called feminists. German unification, the making of Germany and Italy. This paragraph, this part 4 of the chapter has come now. As I told you that I'll try to cover this complete chapter in this video. So keep watching this video, do not leave in between. You may miss your marks. Only few important points are left now. You might see a gathering of people, means where people declared their king, their emperor, German chancellor. Let's discuss what happened in Germany. Earlier, Germany was not a state, it was a confederation of 39 states, small states were there, which were conquered by Napoleon Bonaparte. And in 1848, Frankfurt Parliament was one of the parliament in which first effort of its unification was done, although it failed. 1848, Persian people, they tried to unite this nation, but there was no success. In next few years, one another nationalist of Germany, or from Persia, you may say, Otto von Bismarck. You might see this highlighted name, Otto von Bismarck, who is also known as Iron Man. Means he fought 3 wars with Austria, Denmark and France, and ultimately in 1871, Persian king William I, he was proclaimed as German emperor. Means with the efforts of Otto von Bismarck, Kaiser William I, he was declared as the king of Germany. This ceremony, this picture which you had already seen here, it is the picture related to the oath taking ceremony of Kaiser William I. Otto von Bismarck's effort became successful. Here is one picture related to Italian state. One map is shown on this map. On left side, you may see this map. It is related to parts of Italy before 1858, and this second one, this is Italian states after the unification. Means here on this second map is shown. So what was there in Italy? What happened in Italy? How Italy unified? Let's see. This picture is of Italy. After discussion about the Italian unification, I will come back to this picture. That time you will be able to understand what is the meaning here. In 19th century, Italy was divided into 7 states. There were 7 states in Italy. Only one, Sardinia Piedmont, was ruled by the Italian princely house. Sorry. Whereas the north was under Austrian Habsburg Empire. Center was ruled by Pope, and the southern region of Italy were under the dominions of Bourbon King of Spain. In Italy, 3 revolutionaries, 3 people played an important role for its revolution, for its unification. Those 3 people are Giuseppe Mazzini, you might see on the screen this person was the member of 3 secret societies, Carbonari, Young Italy and Young Europe. Cavour, chief minister. Cavour means he led the movement and he was the mastermind to unify this Italy through his tactful and diplomatic alliances with France. He defeated Austrian forces in 1859. So Cavour was very diplomatic person of Italy. Then Garibaldi, the third one. Third was Garibaldi. Giuseppe Garibaldi means in 1860 marched to the southern part of Italy, and two Sicilies and other areas were merged into Italian states. These were driven out from Spanish ruler, and in 1861 Victor Emmanuel, you might see this name on the screen, Victor Emmanuel II, he was proclaimed as the King of United Italy in 1861 AD. Now this picture which I had already shown to you, this picture is a caricature of Otto von Bismarck in Germany. Sorry, this picture is showing Garibaldi helping King Victor Emmanuel II of Sardinia Piedmont to pull out on the boot named Italy. Means this person was a bit confused about the name of Italy. At later stage also he felt that this Italy or this Italia, this La Italia was the Victor Emmanuel's wife. Coming over to next slide, here strange case of Britain is mentioned. Why this case is considered as strange? Because Britain or United Kingdom, it had 4 ethnic groups. People spoke 4 main languages in this country, United Kingdom: English, Wales, Scot, means people of England they spoke English, Ireland they spoke Irish, Scotland they spoke Scot, and Wales. 4 ethnic groups were there. All ethnic groups, all these people had their own cultural and political traditions. Though the major problem was of English people. English Parliament or England Parliament seized power from monarchy in 1688. It became a democratic nation after glorious revolution of 1688, which ended the monarchy rule, and it was the beginning of the democracy in France, in England. But in 1707 an act of union was signed between England and Scotland. By this act of union, England imposed its influence on Scottish people. On Scotland people, so many restrictions were imposed by England. Meanwhile, compulsory English language was imposed on them. Then British Parliament, dominated by English members, means The growth of British identity meant that Scotland's distinctive culture and political institutions were suppressed. Meanwhile, they were not given any importance in the nation. Only English language was preferred in Scotland. This was showing the dominions of England on Scottish people or on Scotland, which led friction among the people. Although in this chapter means no other discussion is given about the Scotland and England, that what happened ultimately. Next we have Ireland case. In Ireland means two major communities, two major ethnic groups were there. One was Catholics, one was Protestant. English people, they helped Protestants of Ireland to establish their dominions over the large Catholic groups. Meanwhile, Protestants who were less in number, they were supported by English, and Catholics, they revolted against the British as well as these English people and Protestant people. Although they revolted against their leader Wolfe, ultimately the revolt was crushed, it was suppressed, and new symbols were adopted in Britain. First one is their flag, which is known as Union Jack. It was adopted as a new symbol for the nation. The national anthem, God Save Our Noble King, was also accepted. English language, that was promoted, and there was no other change in these four nations. That's why it is considered as a strange case. Part 5 is the visualizing the nation. This is the last part of this chapter. You might see one picture of lady having sword, oak leaves, flag. This is not a picture of a famous lady or someone else. It is an allegory. Allegory, here it refers a representation of a nation. Here allegory refers to an abstract idea, means which is expressed through a person or anything. An allegorical story has two main meanings, one literal and one is symbolic. So Germania is the allegory of Germany, like Bharat Mata is the allegory of India. You might see some of the symbols shown on this picture. We will explain these symbols one by one. As one side you might see this broken chain, which signifies the being freed, means people got freedom. Then here you might see this broken chain. Breastplate with eagle, here this one is shown here. It means symbol of the German Empire or the strength. Crown of oak leaves, here this crown of oak leaves is shown here, which shows the heroism. Heroism is represented through this crown of oak leaves. A sword is shown here. This one is sword. Readiness to fight. Olive branch around this sword. These are the olive branches around this sword. Willingness to make peace means not only to fight, means to peace also. Black, red and gold tricolor. You might see black, red and gold tricolor of Germany. A flag of the liberal nationalists in 1848, banned by dukes of all German states later on. Rays of rising sun. Here these rays of rising sun are shown. So these are representing the beginning of the new era. Here you might see all these symbols and their significance is shown in this next slide. Broken chain, breastplate with eagle, crown of oak leaves, sword, olive branch around the sword, black, red and gold tricolor, rays of the rising sun. One another picture of Germania. When you see these pictures in your book, you might find some names of the artists too. That in 1860, the artist Lorenz Claessen, he was commissioned to paint this image. The inscription on Germania's sword reads, "The German sword protects the German Rhine." So these are very, very important portraits, pictures. Next, on the next slide, you might see this picture of Marini. It is also given in your chapter. One postage stamp is shown here. Postage stamp of 1850 with the figure of Marini representing the Republic of France. Here you might see in this picture, this allegory is shown. Marini is French allegory, means which is representing the nation. As I told you that just like we have represented, means we have adopted Bharat Mata as our allegory. The same way French people also adopted this Marini, and German people they adopted Germania. French Revolution artists they use female allegory to portray their ideas such as liberty, justice and republic. And here red cap is shown on this allegory. The broken chain that is also used, while the justice is generally a blindfolded woman carrying a pair of weighing scales. In other parts it is shown. So female allegories are used by different nations. In France it is Marini and in Germany it is Germania. Last and most important concept of this chapter, part of this chapter, part 6, Nationalism and Imperialism. So regarding nationalism, I told you that it is the feeling or the love for the nation. When there is feeling of common identity, that is considered as nationalism. Whereas this imperialism refers to establishment or the control of a powerful nation on a poor country or other country. So in this para we will discuss about the Balkan Wars. Balkan is a region or a geographical area having different ethnic groups. People of this area, they are called Slavs. Here you might see this highlighted word, Slavs. A large part of the Balkan area was under the control of Ottoman Empire, as I have already discussed about Ottoman Empire in previous slides related to Italian unification. We discussed that Muslim rulers they ruled this Ottoman Empire. So large part of this Slav region or Balkan area was under them. Here are some states which were the part of this Balkan area. One is Romania, Bulgaria, Albania, Greece, Macedonia, Croatia, Bosnia Herzegovina, Slovenia, Serbia, and Montenegro. These were the states means which had Slav people, and commonly these states were known as Balkan states. These states had imperialistic rule of many European nations, European countries. They had their control over these Balkan states. In 19th century, when nationalism feeling liberty, equality and fraternity, these ideas, love for the nation, independence, these feeling arose among the people of these Balkan areas. Means they started protesting these colonial powers, these imperialistic powers, and these European countries too tried to expand their territories from one nation to another, which led to conflicts and wars between these nations, and ultimately First World War began because of this Balkan region. It was the major tension area in 19th century, or after 1871. This Balkan area became the major tension area in the world, which led to First World War. So here important terminology is Slavs, community, ethnic groups. Balkan region means these you have to understand. In this chapter I covered all the important topics of this chapter. This is compulsory chapter of class 10th. I hope you understood most of the concepts easily. You can watch this video at least 2-3 times before the examination so that you can understand the topic easily. Thank you very much. You are listening Arvind Bardwaj. Thanks and have a nice day.